Alex Pereira thinks his two kickboxing victories over middleweight champion Israel Adesanya give him a distinct mental advantage going into their UFC 281 main event fight. In fact, the challenger thinks that ever since Pereira joined the UFC roster, Adesanya has been running away from their inevitable confrontation. As soon as it was revealed that Alex Pereira's upcoming matchup with Adesanya would be for the title, he and his entire team complained that it was somewhat unfair for me to be competing for the title since I had only recently arrived. Pereira said on an MMA Fighting's podcast that Adesanya did so many fights and he should do the same. Man, I'm just hearing that and taking it as something positive for me. That shows me he pretended he wanted the fight, and when I got here, his whole team was against it. That shows all of them. He and his team are mentally shook. Since joining the promotion as a middleweight, the champion from New Zealand has been nearly unbeatable. His one misstep was a lopsided loss to Jan Blachowicz, an attempt to win the light heavyweight title in both divisions. Adesanya had defeated every upcoming opponent in the 185-pound division aside from the hiccup, including two of them twice, Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori. In the first of their kickboxing matches, Pereira won by a razor-thin decision. In the rematch, Adesanya appeared to have learned his lesson, playing matador to Pereira's pressure style more skillfully, and even introducing a standing 8 count in the second round. Then, in the third round, Pereira connected with a crushing left hook and knocked Adesanya to the ground, and even prevented him from even making an attempt to get up as Pereira stood over him yelling. Adesanya has talked plenty of smack about Pereira as a mixed martial artist, while also discrediting any notion that Pereira would have an advantage entering the octagon, despite tasting his rival power, which will only be amplified with smaller MMA gloves. He has even gone so far as to take credit for Pereira's opportunity to compete for the title after only 4 UFC fights. Whether Pereira has a mental advantage or not won't matter as much as how well he performs in the octagon. In light of this, let's examine what Pereira must accomplish in order to win the middleweight title. In advance of UFC 281, UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya is adopting a new strategy for trash talking. In New York City's UFC 281 main event, Adesanya faced Alex Pereira. After 2 successful defenses this year against Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier, he returns to the octagon. Only Pereira has ever defeated Adesanya in a combat sport match. After winning by decision in their first encounter in 2016, he defeated Adesanya by knockout at Glory of Heroes 7 in 2017. Pereira has quickly risen to the top of the middleweight division title race since joining the UFC last year thanks to spectacular knockouts on Sean Strickland and Andreas Michailidis. Adesanya appears willing to match Pereira's intensity with his striking, despite being aware of the threat he poses. Adesanya typically engages in mental combat with his opponents, but this time, it's been challenging because Pereira can't speak English. Despite this difficulty, Adesanya has a strategy for speaking in a tongue that Pereira can understand. Adesanya communicated with his UFC 281 adversary during a recent interview with TMZ Sports. "He doesn't speak English, so I don't really have anything to say to him," Adesanya said. "I'll speak his language. He's a violent man, but so am I. We'll speak violence on November 12th. Adesanya recently begged Dana White, president of the UFC, to name referee Steve Mazzagatti as the match's referee. Adesanya believed that this would give room for additional strikes after the point at which the fight might be considered over. Adesanya appears especially motivated to take on Pereira and show supporters and analysts why he's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters after suffering 2 of the most discouraging defeats of his combat sports career. Both fighters use leg kicks, feints, and testing their reach to start the fight evenly matched. The Brazilian was stunned by a jab and a right hook from the last style bender as the round came to a close, but he was spared by the bell. Alex Pereira made a comeback in the second round as the former 2-division Glory kickboxing champion started connecting with kicks and punches. Adesanya was aware of Alex Pereira's momentum beginning to develop. The first takedown of the last style bender UFC career was performed in the third round. He spent a lot of time in top position, effectively pinning the Brazilian to the ground and punishing him with some ground and pound blows. The Nigerian-born Kiwi carried the momentum into the 4th round after a strong third round. Alex Pereira appeared to be in for a decision loss to Israel Adesanya, but in the 5th and final round, Poatine, acting on the counsel of Glover Teixeira, pursued the champion and threw a ton of blows that caused Adesanya to pass out on his feet. At UFC 281 in New York, UFC middleweight champion Adesanya attempted to defend his title against longtime foe Pereira, but after dominating for significant stretches of the fight, he was knocked out in the final round. The Brazilian had already defeated Adesanya twice in their kickboxing career, in 2016 and 2017. This was a crushing blow for Adesanya. In the lead-up to the fight, the two had traded insults, and during the brawl, Pereira was seen threatening to kill Adesanya in the video. However, after the final bell, when the last stylebender showed his respect, the two were able to exchange pleasantries. "I don't know him as a person," Adesanya told the MMA Hour when discussing what happened following the stoppage with his opponent in the octagon. "I told him after the fight, when I took a bow to the crowd, he came up to me and said, 'Hey, respect, respect.' And I was like, 'I don't like you. You don't like me. But respect.' And we shook hands. Energies don't mix, and that's okay. This is war. So war still rages on." The loss was a crushing blow for Adesanya, who had not lost at 185 pounds since joining the UFC. He was again beaten by the potent Poatan, who had only competed 3 times in the promotion before the victory. The winner had asserted confidently that he's capable of defeating Pereira, but had declined to be drawn into the pressure of the build-up this time. And despite falling short on his third attempt, the 33-year-old insists that he can beat Pereira and anticipates that a rematch will be scheduled right away for the following year. "I'll watch the fight again," he continued. "I haven't watched the fight again, but I don't think I'm going to fixate on it, because it's not one of these things that's like, oh, God damn it, I'll fight him again. I'll probably fight him 2 more times." In his career, Pereira has defeated Adesanya 3 times in a row. Dana White, the president of the UFC, suggested a rematch despite the Brazilian's overwhelming advantage. Israel Adesanya received an apology from Alex Pereira for the social media slurs as he was gracious in his victory. He admitted that in order to win the game, he had to think like his rival. However, he also thought it was prophesized that he would win the title, as well as several other people on social media. Madison Square Garden spectators were in shock as they watched Adesanya's reign as champion come to an end. With this, we have come to a close of this video. Share your thoughts about the match in the comment section. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you do that before you leave. Also, don't forget to hit the like button. See you soon on the next video. Have a great